You never think it'll happen to you. That's what they all say, right? You hear about marriages falling apart, cheating, lying, all the clichés, but you convince yourself that your relationship is different. That's what I thought about Ariana and me. 8 years together. 5 years married. I thought we had a good thing: love, stability, shared dreams. Sure, the spark had dimmed a little over the years, but that happens to everyone. I figured it was just part of life, but looking back, I can see the cracks. It started with the small things: late nights at work that turned into overnight trips, phone calls she would step outside to take, a shift in the way she looked at me. There was a distance growing between us, slow and subtle, like a door closing an inch at a time. That I ignored the signs at first. We all want to believe the best in the people we love, but deep down, something was wrong that I just didn't know how wrong it really was. At first, the changes in Ariana were easy to explain away. She worked in marketing, long hours, client dinners, and weekend conferences were part of the job. I told myself the late nights were normal, that her phone constantly buzzing was just work, that her growing distance was nothing more than stress, but it wasn't just the hours or the phone. It was her smile, the way she used to light up when I walked into the room, that was gone. Now, when she smiled, it was different, like she was holding on to a secret that made her feel alive in a way I no longer could. The first time I really questioned things was about 6 months ago. She had started going to a new doctor, some specialist she claimed she needed to see for recurring migraines. I didn't think much of it at first. She'd always been prone to headaches, and I figured it was just another doctor's visit, but after that first appointment, something shifted. Suddenly, she was booking more appointments. Monthly, then bi-weekly. Then, somehow, she needed to see him every week. Dr. Caldwell is incredible, she said one evening, her eyes lighting up in a way I hadn't seen in months. He really understands what I'm going through. Something about the way she said his name made my stomach twist. Still, I told myself I was overthinking it. Why wouldn't I trust my wife? Ariana's phone became her constant companion. She used to leave it charging in the kitchen when we went to bed. Now, it was always within arm's reach. If it buzzed while we were watching TV, she'd glance at the screen, her lips pressing together before tucking the phone out of sight. One night, I woke up around midnight and found the other side of the bed empty. I got up and found her in the living room, her phone clutched in her hand. The soft glow of the screen illuminated her face as she whispered into the receiver, "Ariana?" She jumped, her eyes wide as she spun around. "Charles. You scared me. Who are you talking to?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She hesitated just for a second. "Work," she said quickly. "It's a client issue. I didn't want to wake you." I stood there, my pulse quickening. Something about the way she clutched that phone, the way her fingers trembled slightly, it didn't feel right, but what was I supposed to say? So I nodded. "All right. Just, come to bed soon, okay?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes, of course. I should have pushed harder, but I didn't. Over the next few weeks, Ariana's schedule became even more unpredictable. Another late meeting, she'd text me around 7 p.m., heading to the gym after work. "Don't wait up. Staying overnight at the conference hotel. It's easier than driving home late." The excuses piled up, one after another. And each time, I convinced myself that it was normal. After all, she wasn't coming home smelling like another man's cologne. She wasn't sneaking off in the middle of the night, she was just distant, until the day I found the first piece of real evidence. It was a Saturday morning. Ariana had left early, claiming she needed to help a colleague prepare for a big presentation. I decided to clean up the house, hoping to shake the restless energy that had been building inside me for weeks. As I picked up her coat from the back of the chair, something fluttered to the floor. A receipt. I bent down, my brow furrowed as I picked it up. It was from a hotel downtown, the Winston. A 5-star boutique hotel known for its luxurious suites and private atmosphere. The date on the receipt was from 2 nights ago, the night she told me she was working late at the office. My hands trembled as I scanned the details: room service, champagne and a charcuterie platter, late checkout, 11 a.m. My heart pounded in my chest. this wasn't dinner with colleagues, this wasn't a late night at the office. This was something else, something I had been too blind to see. That I sat down heavily on the couch, staring at the receipt in my hand. Was it possible she'd gone there alone? Maybe she'd booked a room to get away, to de-stress. But the champagne, the late checkout, it didn't add up. I tried to push the thoughts away, but they clung to me like shadows. The woman I had trusted with my heart, my life, my future, was she lying to me? I had to know the truth, even if it destroyed me. The hotel receipt burned a hole in my hand. That I sat there, gripping it so tightly that the paper crumpled between my fingers. My mind raced, trying to find a reasonable explanation, any explanation that didn't lead to the conclusion I was starting to dread. Ariana wouldn't do this to me, would she? I took a shaky breath, staring at the hotel name printed at the top. The Winston.it was a place we had been to once years ago for our anniversary. I remembered the way she'd smiled that night, her eyes soft with love as we shared champagne and whispered promises about the future. Now, the same hotel was a symbol of something darker, but I couldn't confront her, not yet. That I needed more than a piece of paper, that I needed proof. That night, Ariana came home late again. I sat on the couch, pretending to read while my thoughts churned beneath the surface. Long day? I asked casually as she kicked off her heels. Yeah, she sighed. Back-to-back meetings. I barely had time to eat lunch. Liar. That I forced a smile, my heart hammering in my chest. Must be exhausting. She shrugged and headed to the bedroom. I listened as the water ran in the bathroom, my eyes drifting toward her phone, which she had left charging on the kitchen counter. For a moment, I hesitated. This was a line I had never crossed before, but after finding that receipt, I had to know the truth. That I picked up the phone, my hands trembling as I swiped the screen. Password protected. Of course, but Ariana wasn't as careful as she thought. I remembered seeing her enter it once quickly, absent-mindedly. That I took a deep breath and tried the combination I thought I'd seen. .1-9-8-7. The screen unlocked with a soft click. My pulse thundered in my ears as I opened her messages. At first, it looked normal, chats with friends, co-workers, her sister. But then I saw it. A contact saved under a single initial, C. I clicked the conversation, and what I found made my blood run cold. Can't stop thinking about last night. Your hands, your mouth. God, I still feel you. My chest tightened as I scrolled down. Wish I could see you again tonight. I hate sneaking around, but it's worth it. Another message, the way you touched me in the hotel. I've never felt that with anyone else. I swallowed hard, bile rising in my throat. My hands shook as I read each word, each intimate detail that painted a picture I didn't want to see. And then, the name that confirmed everything. Next time, Caldwell. Don't leave those marks where my husband can see them. My heart stopped. Caldwell, her doctor, the man she had praised, the one who had been helping her with her migraines, the one she had been seeing every week. I clenched my jaw, my breath coming in shallow gasps. I wanted to throw the phone, to smash it against the wall, to do something, anything to stop the ache that was building in my chest, but I couldn't, because now, I had my proof. I put the phone back exactly where I found it, then sat down at the kitchen table, my hands gripping the edge as if holding on could keep my world from falling apart. My mind raced through every moment, every lie she had told. Late meetings at work. Drinks with colleagues. Overnight conferences. It had all been for him while I had been at home, trusting her, loving her, believing in our marriage. She had been with another man, and not just any man. A man I had never suspected. A man she had used her health issues as an excuse to see. I wanted to confront her right then, to wake her up and demand answers, but I didn't, because I knew that if I did it without a plan, she would find a way to lie her way out of it. No, I needed more than texts and a receipt. I needed to catch her in the act, and when I did, there would be no way out. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the words from Ariana's phone, the way she spoke to him, the way she craved him. The man I had trusted to help my wife with her migraines had instead become her escape. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling as she slept beside me, her breath slow and even. How could she sleep so peacefully while I was drowning in the truth? By morning, one thing was clear, I needed to catch her red-handed. No more doubts. No more hoping I was wrong that I needed the kind of proof she couldn't talk her way out of. Ariana's schedule had become predictable: weekly doctor's visits, late nights at work, and those overnight conferences. I waited until the next time she mentioned her appointment with Dr. Caldwell. "It's just a quick checkup," she said casually over breakfast. "Shouldn't take more than an hour." I forced a smile. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just routine," she replied, stirring her coffee as if nothing was wrong. "Liar." She kissed me on the cheek before heading out the door, her perfume lingering in the air. The same perfume she probably wore for him. The moment she left, I grabbed my keys and followed her. I kept my distance as I trailed her car through the city streets, my heart hammering the whole time. Every red light, every slow-moving car, every second that passed felt like an eternity. Finally, she pulled into the parking lot of Caldwell's clinic. I parked a few spaces away, watching as she stepped out of the car. Her outfit wasn't what you'd expect for a doctor's appointment: tight blouse, fitted skirt, heels that clicked against the pavement. She looked more like a woman meeting her lover than a patient seeing her doctor. I gritted my teeth as she disappeared inside. Now came the hard part: waiting. 1 hour passed, then 2. My grip on the steering wheel tightened as the minutes dragged on. This wasn't a quick checkup. This was something else. I knew I should have walked in, confronted them both right then and there. But something held me back, some dark part of me that needed to see the truth with my own eyes, no matter how much it hurt. Finally, after almost 3 hours, Ariana emerged from the clinic. Her hair was slightly tousled, her blouse slightly askew, her cheeks flushed with color. I didn't need to see anything else. I knew, but still, I needed more. That night, I waited until Ariana was in the shower. Then, I unlocked her phone again. More texts from Caldwell: "Can't wait to see you again. Same time next week? You looked incredible today. I can still taste you on my lips." My stomach twisted, but I kept scrolling, and then I found it: the next hotel meetup, Friday night. The Winston. Room 514. "I'll be waiting." I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. This was it, the chance to catch them both in the act. No more suspicions. No more hiding. This time, I would see it with my own eyes, and when I did, there would be no going back. Friday night arrived, and with it, the weight of what I was about to do settled deep in my chest. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. I had the messages, the hotel receipt, and the pieces of a puzzle I never wanted to put together. But tonight, I would see the final piece, the one I couldn't ignore. I sat in the living room, pretending to watch TV as Ariana moved around the house upstairs. I could hear the soft hum of the hairdryer, the click of her heels against the hardwood floor, the faint rustle of fabric as she adjusted her outfit. She was getting ready for him. I clenched my fists, my pulse quickening as footsteps descended the stairs. When she stepped into view, I forced myself to keep my expression neutral. Her black dress hugged her figure perfectly, too perfect for a simple, client dinner. The faint scent of her favorite perfume trailed behind her, the one she used when she wanted to feel irresistible. "Late night tonight?" I asked, keeping my tone light. She glanced at me with that familiar, effortless smile. "Yeah, big client dinner. Probably won't be back until late. Don't wait up, okay?" I nodded, swallowing the anger rising in my throat. "Of course. Have a good time." Her smile lingered for a moment longer before she grabbed her coat and walked out the door. The moment the door clicked shut, I grabbed my keys and followed. Trailing her through the city streets felt like something out of a movie, except there was nothing glamorous about this. My heart pounded harder with every turn, every traffic light, every moment that brought me closer to the truth I already knew but still couldn't fully accept. She drove with confidence, unaware of the car following at a distance. I kept my headlights low, my hands tight on the wheel, and then, as expected, she pulled into the parking lot of the Winston. I parked a few spaces away and watched as she stepped out of her car, adjusting her dress before glancing at her phone, no doubt reading a message from him. She didn't hesitate. She walked straight toward the side entrance, where security cameras wouldn't catch her face. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Every instinct in me screamed to get out of the car, to confront her right there in the parking lot. But I needed to see it with my own eyes, the final, undeniable proof that would leave no room for her lies. 15 minutes later, I entered the lobby, keeping my head down as I passed the front desk. I ignored the curious glance from the receptionist and headed straight for the elevators, room 514. The number burned in my mind like a brand. Each step down the hallway echoed in my ears as I approached the door. My pulse pounded so hard it drowned out every other sound: the hum of the lights, the distant murmur of a TV from another room, even my own ragged breathing. And then I heard them: soft laughter, hushed whispers, the unmistakable creak of the mattress as weight shifted. I stood frozen outside the door, my phone in hand, the voice recorder already running. My thumb hovered over the screen, torn between pressing stop and throwing the device through the wall, but I forced myself to hold steady because I needed this. Not just for the proof. Not just so I could confront her without giving her any room to deny it. I needed it for myself to know that I wasn't crazy. That every suspicion, every late night, every gut-wrenching moment of doubt had been real. Through the thin wood of the door, I heard Caldwell's voice, low and smooth. "God, you feel incredible," he murmured. Ariana's soft laugh followed. "You say that every time." "Because it's true," he replied. "Every time we meet, I want you even more." Her breath hitched, and then, "I can't stay too late tonight. Charles might get suspicious." Caldwell chuckled softly. "He doesn't have a clue, does he?" "Not yet," she said, her voice hushed but amused. "But even if he did, what could he do about it?" I staggered back from the door as if the words had physically struck me. My vision blurred, my breath coming in sharp, shallow gasps. What could I do about it? The answer was crystal clear now. I forced myself to turn and walk back down the hallway, my footsteps heavy against the carpet. Each step felt like I was dragging the weight of my entire marriage behind me. I reached the elevator and stepped inside, leaning back against the wall as the doors slid shut. My reflection stared back at me from the polished metal surface, a man holding the last pieces of a life that had just fallen apart. When I reached my car, I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, gripping the steering wheel as if it could hold me together. My phone, still recording, lay on the passenger seat beside me, proof that I had the proof now, but the confrontation, that would come next, and when it did, Ariana would have nowhere left to hide. I sat in the driver's seat, gripping the wheel as the hotel's neon sign flickered in the distance. The audio recording still played faintly through my earbuds, every whispered word cutting deeper than the last. Charles might get suspicious. Even if he did, what could he do about it? Her voice echoed in my head, each syllable soaked in mockery. What could I do about it? More than she could ever imagine. I inhaled slowly, trying to steady my breath. My entire body buzzed with adrenaline, the kind that made your hands tremble and your chest feel like it was about to explode. I had what I needed, the messages, the hotel receipt, and now, the recording. But I wasn't done yet. I needed her to see the truth in my eyes when I laid it all out. I needed her to hear the words from my mouth and realize there was no escape this time. Hours passed before Ariana's car finally pulled into the driveway. I sat in the darkened living room, the glow of a single lamp casting long shadows across the walls. The air felt heavy, charged with the weight of what was about to happen. The front door creaked open. Her heels clicked softly against the floor as she stepped inside, the faint scent of her perfume trailing behind her, the same scent I'd smelled in that hotel hallway. "Charles," she called out, "I'm here." She paused, her silhouette frozen for a moment in the doorway. Then, with that familiar smile, she stepped into the room, slipping off her coat as if everything was perfectly normal. "You're up late," she said casually. I studied her face, searching for any flicker of guilt, but there was none. She had perfected the art of deception, masking her lies behind soft smiles and half-truths. "Couldn't sleep," I replied, my voice calm but tight. "Stress from work?" "Something like that." She nodded, kicking off her heels with a sigh. "The dinner ran late. You know how clients can be, always asking for just one more drink." I stared at her for a long moment, my fingers curling against the armrest of the chair. I could have confronted her right then and there, thrown the proof in her face and watched her scramble for excuses, but not yet, not until I was ready. The next morning, I called in sick to work. While Ariana left for her doctor's appointment, I spent the day gathering every piece of evidence I had, the hotel receipt from the Winston, the text messages from Caldwell saved to my phone, the audio recording of their latest encounter. I printed everything out, every detail, every lie, every betrayal. By the time I was finished, the dining table was covered in a collection of broken promises and shattered trust. I stared at the pile of evidence, my hands trembling slightly as the weight of it all sank in. This wasn't just about an affair, this was about the woman I had trusted with my life, the woman who had smiled in my face while tearing my world apart behind my back. That afternoon, as I sat at the kitchen table, my phone buzzed with an incoming call, unknown number. Frowning, I picked it up. Hello? There was a pause. Then, a voice I recognized instantly, smooth, confident, and all too familiar. Dr. Caldwell, Charles, he said, his tone calm and composed. We need to talk. I gripped the phone tighter. What the hell do you want? I think you know, he replied. Look, I didn't want things to happen this way. Ariana, she's not happy. I know this isn't easy to hear, but sometimes relationships change. My jaw clenched. Don't you dare talk to me about my marriage. I'm not trying to hurt you, Charles. But you deserve to know the truth. Ariana and I, it's more than just sex. My breath caught in my chest. What are you saying? She loves me, Caldwell said simply. And I love her. For a moment, the world seemed to tilt beneath me. But she's afraid to tell you, he continued, his voice almost sympathetic. That's why I'm calling. Maybe it's time we all had an honest conversation. No more sneaking around. No more secrets. I swallowed hard, my heart hammering in my chest. Where are you right now? Why does that matter? Tell me where you are, I repeated, my voice low and steady. There was a pause. Then, I'm at my clinic, Caldwell replied. If you want to talk, I'll be here. I hung up without another word. The drive to Caldwell's clinic was a blur. My thoughts spiraled in a storm of anger, betrayal, and the need for answers. Every mile I covered brought me closer to the man who had stolen my wife and the confrontation that would change everything. By the time I pulled into the parking lot, my hands were shaking with adrenaline. I stepped out of the car, the cool air biting against my skin as I approached the building's entrance. This was it. No more secrets. No more lies, and no more turning back. I stepped into Caldwell's clinic, the air thick with the sterile scent of disinfectant and something else, anticipation. My pulse thundered in my ears as I crossed the lobby, my gaze fixed straight ahead. The receptionist glanced up with a polite smile. Can I help you, sir? I'm here to see Dr. Caldwell, I replied, my voice low but firm. Do you have an appointment? I met her gaze. He's expecting me. Her smile faltered, but she nodded, sensing the tension in my voice. Room 3. Down the hall, second door on the left. I turned and walked down the corridor, my footsteps echoing against the polished floor. Each step brought me closer to the man who had stolen my wife, the man who had dared to call me and speak as if he was doing me a favor. I paused outside room 3, my hand resting on the doorknob. For a moment, doubt flickered in my mind. Was this the right way to do this? Then I remembered Ariana's voice through the hotel door. Charles might get suspicious. Even if he did, what could he do about it? I gritted my teeth, steeling myself. This was for every lie. Every betrayal. Every sleepless night. I twisted the doorknob and stepped inside. Caldwell stood by his desk, his white coat draped neatly over his shoulders, a clipboard in hand. His gaze lifted as I entered, and for a moment, he said nothing, just studied me with that same calm, unreadable expression I'd come to hate. Charles, he said smoothly, setting down the clipboard. I wasn't sure you'd come. I closed the door behind me with deliberate slowness, the soft click echoing in the room. I'm here now. His lips curved into a faint smile, as if this was some kind of game. Look, I know this is difficult, but I cut him off, stepping forward. Don't you dare pretend to understand what this feels like. His smile didn't waver. I never wanted to hurt you. But Ariana, she's been unhappy for a long time. My fists clenched at my sides. Don't talk to me about my wife. She's not just your wife, he replied calmly. Not anymore. The room seemed to shrink around me, the air thick with unspoken words. Every fiber of my being screamed to lash out to make him feel even a fraction of the pain he had caused me, but I held myself in check that I wasn't here for violence, that I was here for the truth. Tell me how it started, I demanded, my voice low and hard. Caldwell's smile faded slightly, replaced by something more serious. It started after her second appointment. We connected, unexpectedly. I swallowed hard. Connected? He nodded. She opened up to me about her migraines, her stress, her loneliness. I took a shaky breath, my chest tightening. So you took advantage of that? No, he said firmly. It wasn't like that. Ariana made the first move. I stared at him, my mind spinning. I wanted to deny it, to call him a liar. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had seen the texts, heard the recording. Ariana had wanted this, she came to me, Caldwell continued. At first, it was just conversations. But then, it became more. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears, drowning out everything but his voice. Why? I asked, my voice rough. Why her? Why my wife? Caldwell's gaze didn't waver. Because she needed something you couldn't give her. The words hit harder than I expected. My breath caught in my throat as anger, heartbreak, and disbelief collided inside me. I took a step closer, my fists trembling at my sides. And you thought that gave you the right to take her from me? I didn't take her, he replied calmly. She chose me. Those 3 words sliced through me like a blade. She chose me. I stared at him, my vision blurring with unshed tears. For months, I had clung to the hope that there was some explanation, some reason that would make this easier to understand, but there wasn't. Ariana had made her choice, and so had I. I stepped back, forcing myself to breathe. This isn't over, I said quietly. Caldwell tilted his head slightly, curiosity flickering in his eyes. What do you mean? I met his gaze, my voice steady. You're going to regret every moment you spent with her. Then I turned and walked out of the room, leaving him standing there in stunned silence, because this wasn't the end, this was just the beginning. I left Caldwell's office with my pulse still hammering in my chest. The air outside felt sharp against my skin, but it did nothing to dull the fire burning inside me. His words echoed in my mind, each one cutting deeper than the last. She chose me. I gritted my teeth as I climbed into my car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The confrontation hadn't given me the closure I wanted. If anything, it had only intensified the storm raging inside me. This wasn't over, not until Ariana faced the truth. By the time I arrived home, the sun had begun to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the driveway. I stepped inside, the familiar scent of the house feeling strangely foreign now, as if it no longer belonged to me. I moved through the rooms with purpose, collecting every piece of evidence I had gathered, the hotel receipt from the Winston, the text messages from Caldwell, the audio recording from that night outside room 514. I printed out the messages and placed them neatly beside the receipt, each piece of paper a testament to the lies Ariana had woven into our marriage. The audio file was saved on my phone, ready to play when the time was right. I sat at the dining table, staring at the collection of evidence spread out before me. My heart pounded with anticipation and something else, finality. This was the moment everything would come crashing down. Hours passed as I sat in silence, the ticking of the clock on the wall growing louder with each passing minute. Every distant sound of a car made my pulse spike, but it wasn't her. Not yet. When Ariana finally walked through the door just after 10 p.m., I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. Hey, she called casually, setting her purse down on the entryway table. You're still up? I stood slowly, my gaze steady. We need to talk. Something in my voice must have tipped her off. She paused, her smile faltering slightly. Is everything okay? I motioned toward the dining table. Sit down. Her eyes flicked to the papers laid out before her, confusion knitting her brow as she stepped closer. What's all this? I said nothing, watching as she picked up the hotel receipt. Her eyes scanned the date and location, her fingers tightening around the paper as her breath hitched. Charles, I cut her off sharply. Not yet. Keep reading. Her gaze shifted to the printed text messages. I watched the color drain from her face as the words stared back at her, every whispered promise, every stolen moment, every lie. Her lips parted as if to speak, but she hesitated. Finally, she looked up at me, her eyes wide with something that almost resembled fear. Charles, I can explain. I laughed coldly. Go ahead, Ariana. Explain the hotel. The messages. The weekly appointments with Caldwell. She swallowed hard, her eyes darting toward the doorway as if she wanted to run. But there was no escape now. You've been lying to me for over a year, I continued, my voice low but firm. Sneaking around behind my back, smiling in my face while you slept with another man. A man who had the nerve to call me and tell me you love him. Ariana's eyes widened. He called you? Oh, yeah, I said, my smile sharp and humorless. Told me all about how you chose him. How you've been unhappy for a long time. Is that true, Ariana? Were you really so miserable that cheating was the only option? She stepped forward, her hands clasped together as if in prayer. Charles, please, it wasn't supposed to happen this way. I never meant to hurt you. I stepped back, shaking my head. Don't stand there and pretend you're the victim. I'm not. Then why? I demanded, my voice rising. Why him? Why lie to me for so long? Tears welled in her eyes, but I couldn't tell if they were from guilt or fear of what was coming next. I didn't plan for this, she whispered. I was lost. I needed something I couldn't find with you. I let out a harsh laugh. So you found it in a hotel room with another man? Week after week? Don't insult me, Ariana. She opened her mouth to respond, but I wasn't done. I pulled out my phone, holding it up so she could see the screen. This is from that night at the Winston, I said, pressing play. The audio filled the room, soft laughter, whispered promises, and the unmistakable sound of her voice saying the words that had shattered everything. Charles might get suspicious. Even if he did, what could he do about it? Ariana's face crumpled as the recording played on, each second stripping away any hope she had of denying the truth. When the audio ended, I lowered the phone and met her gaze. Do you still think I can't do anything about it? I asked quietly. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she covered her mouth with her hands. Charles, please. No, I cut her off, stepping forward until we were only inches apart. You don't get to beg for forgiveness. Not after everything you've done. Her shoulders shook as silent sobs racked her frame, but I felt no pity. Not anymore. This marriage is over, I said firmly. I've already spoken to a lawyer. You'll be served the papers next week. Wait please, can't we talk about this? She reached for my arm, but I pulled away. Talk. I scoffed. You made your choice, Ariana. Now you get to live with it. I turned and walked toward the door, pausing only long enough to glance back at her one last time. You asked what I could do about it, I said quietly. Now you know. And with that, I walked out, leaving her alone with the shattered remains of what we used to be. I walked out of the house without looking back. The cool night air hit my face, but it did nothing to numb the ache in my chest. Ariana's sobs echoed faintly behind me, muffled by the walls that now separated us. But her tears didn't matter, not anymore. I had given her everything, she had thrown it all away. Sliding into my car, I took a deep breath, gripping the steering wheel until my hands stopped shaking. The confrontation was over, but the weight of it still clung to me. As I drove away from the house, the home we had built together, I felt the first stirrings of something I hadn't expected, relief, because this wasn't the end, this was the beginning of a life without her. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the blinds, but the house felt colder than ever. The silence was different now, no longer filled with tension, but with the echoes of a life that no longer existed. I stood in the kitchen, sipping coffee and staring at the divorce papers on the counter. The final step. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Ariana, can we talk? Please. I stared at the message for a moment, then deleted it without replying. Some conversations didn't need to happen. I picked up the pen, signed my name at the bottom of the page, and let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. It was over, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Days passed, and with each sunrise, the weight on my chest grew lighter. Ariana had moved out, her presence now a distant memory. The house, once filled with her laughter and lies, felt mine again. I stood by the window, coffee in hand, watching the world move on without her. My phone buzzed beside me. Another message from her. No. This time, it was from Mark. Mark, drinks tonight? Time to celebrate freedom. A small smile tugged at my lips. Yeah. It was time to start living again. The bar buzzed with life, conversations blending with the hum of music, glasses clinking against polished wood. I sat across from Mark, the weight of the past few months lifting with every laugh, every sip of whiskey that burned its way down. So, Mark leaned back, smirking, feeling lighter yet? I took a slow sip, savoring the warmth. Yeah. I think I am. Outside, the night stretched ahead, full of possibilities I hadn't allowed myself to imagine in a long time. No more lies. No more looking over my shoulder, just freedom, and it felt good. The night air was crisp as I stepped out of the bar, the distant hum of the city filling the silence that once felt suffocating. But tonight, it felt like a promise. Mark clapped me on the shoulder. See? Life's not over, man. It's just beginning. I chuckled, shaking my head. Yeah. I think I finally believe that. For the first time in months, the future didn't feel like a question mark. It felt like a blank page waiting for me to write something new, and this time, I wasn't looking back. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the windows, warm and welcoming. For the first time in months, I woke up without the weight of betrayal pressing on my chest. No more Ariana. No more secrets. I stood in the doorway of the bedroom, my bedroom now, and took a slow breath. The past was behind me and ahead, a future that was mine to create. One step at a time. Weeks passed, and with each day, the memory of Ariana faded a little more. I stood outside the house, the one we had shared, the one that no longer held her shadow. The "for sale" sign swayed gently in the breeze, a symbol of the life I was leaving behind. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past lift from my shoulders. No more lies. No more heartbreak, just freedom. Turning away, I walked toward my car without looking back. Because some chapters are meant to end, and this time, I was ready for whatever came next.